Welcome to the August 15th session for the Council on Aging's program about things in and around Carlisle that you should know about if you don't already know. With us today are Jean Bagnashi. She's president of the Friends of the Carlisle Council on Aging. David Klein, the director of the Council on Aging. Angela Smith, the outreach coordinator extraordinaire of the Council on Aging. And our guest this morning is Laura Zamaro, who is on the Carlisle Household Recycling Committee with 3 or 4 other stalwart folks that have been looking at our behavior in Carlisle and what we can do to improve both the reducing, reusing, and recycling our trash in town. So I'd like to have David kick us off, and then we'll go to Laura and talk about trash. Talk some trash.
Talk trash.
David, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Kerry. Just wanted to kick this off by doing a quick announcement on behalf of our town clerk, Mary D. Alderette. I'd say our new town clerk, but it's been a couple months now. I guess in Carlisle time, she's still new, though, right? Anyway, Mary wanted everybody to know that that you can still get an absentee ballot up until Friday, August 31st. So that gives us a couple weeks, but like you said, who knows when people will be seeing this for the first time. So the last day to request an absentee ballot is Friday, August 31st. You can call for the form to the town clerk's office, or you can get the form online at www.carlislema.gov, and then go to the town clerk's site on the website. The key is for returning the absentee ballot is there must be a signature. So as I understand it, you could complete it, sign it, and send it back in. You could bring it back in. You could fax it in, or you could, once you sign it, you could scan it and email it back in. So as long as you get it back in and it has a signature, and then your vote will assumedly be counted.
Excellent.
So we've got plenty to do today, Kerry, but I understand that Lana has to leave shortly, so I guess we can jump in.
Okay.
Great.
Lana, the title of your presentation is Reduce, Reuse, Recycle, ? Responding to the trash crisis. And I guess, we tend to focus on these meetings on Carlisle and never leave the boundaries of Carlisle, but we are so connected and interconnected with the rest of the world that in this particular case especially, we can't do that. We can't disconnect and think that what we do doesn't matter for the rest of the world, because it does, doesn't it?
Right. And we're impacted here by what's going on in the rest of the world as well. So it's a two-way street. And I'm just really pleased to be able to talk today to the public about what's happening. My objective today is to talk about our recycling practices, but also to give people sort of a bigger picture perspective of what's going on, because I think if we understand what's happening internationally, actually, and how it's impacting us, I think it'll help us think about what we're doing currently and how we're going to move forward. But I do want to start off right away with answering 2 recycling questions that are 2 of the most common questions, and that has to do with bottle caps and Chinese food containers. And the answer is that, yes, we can recycle bottle caps, but they have to be screwed on tightly to an empty bottle. So as long as you screw the caps on tightly and the bottle is empty, you can dispose of the bottle in the recycling.
Me bad. Am I going to be arrested for that? I haven't been... I've been separating them, thinking it's the right thing to do.
I've been doing the same thing, and then I found out that it's okay as long as they're on tightly. If they're loose, then they create a problem in the recycling sorting process. And then the other issue is Chinese food containers. We cannot recycle Chinese food containers for a couple of different reasons. But Again, I'm going to be sharing more on the actual recycling sort of do's and don'ts as we move on, but I do want to switch now to a broader perspective and what it means for us. So the trash crisis that is referred to in the subtitle of the presentation is really referring to the fact that in 2017, China, the world's largest importer of recyclable material, announced it was going to stop accepting most recyclable materials coming in from the rest of the world. So the ban from China affects mostly plastics, unsorted paper, and scrap metal. There are 24 items total on the banned list, and I've heard that that list is actually probably going to increase. Some materials will still be accepted, but they need to be in very clean bales. And what that means, bales with minimum contamination. So because it was so much cheaper for us in the rest of the world, not just the U.S., to send that material to China than to invest in recycling infrastructure and build it here in this country and other countries, we're just not prepared to deal with a sudden stoppage there and having to deal with all this material now staying within our borders. I think it's important to know that the ban was enacted as part of a major anti-pollution campaign on the part of China. The issue for China was that so much of what they received in the shipping bales was contaminated with both non-recyclable items, with dirty items that could not be recycled properly, and with material that was even hazardous, that shouldn't be in any recycling bale, period. But it's also important to note that contamination of recycling stock has been a huge problem in the industry well before the Chinese ban. It's just a much larger problem now with the ban. The net effect of that ban is that materials are piling up in many recycling facilities. This is a shot of H.L. Harvey in Westboro, and often ends up diverted to solid waste trash. And that is exactly what we're trying to avoid through recycling. So we try to do what we're doing with regard to separating our recyclables from the trash, but because of this mess, it ends up in solid waste anyway. So that's not what the outcome is supposed to be. So domestic recycling vendors are now having to deal a lot more directly with the problem that plagued China, the contamination issue. It's always been there, but now we're dealing with it almost face to face. So recycling facilities in the U.S. and around the world are paying much closer attention as a result of this to what they're receiving, and they're starting to ban what can be accepted in their facilities, and some are outright rejecting contaminated piles outright. The good news in Massachusetts, I think it's good news, is that vendors are working really closely with the Mass DEP, the Department of Environmental Protection, to develop what they're calling a universal list of acceptable and banned items to be used in all municipalities. And the intention there is to, A, make sure we're getting the cleanest possible stock, but also to reduce confusion, because you go from town to town, every town seems to have its own set of eligibility for recycling stock. So they're trying to get that to be very, very consistent to reduce confusion, and also to give them a more consistent flow of materials. Now, this is another photo taken right out of the H.L. Harvey facility in Westboro, and I included this because it gives us a glimpse, I think, of what's involved in sorting material. Huge volumes of collected materials are sent to conveyor belts that you can see in the graphic there, the photo, and that's where the workers take out what is not recyclable or not usable. And I've got to tell you, I've been to this facility to observe it firsthand, and the belts move really quickly, and there is just an enormous volume of material that these workers have to sort through. I've included the photo to underscore the important distinction that we really need to make between the amount of, quote, recycled material versus what we collect to be recycled. And there is a big difference there. The recycling and solid waste data that municipalities share with the state refers to the amount of material collected to be recycled. Depending on the level of contamination of that material, a smaller percentage is actually recycled. Contamination rates are all over the map, from a low of 5%, which seems to be about as low as we've been able to go in Massachusetts, to as high as 35% and more from some communities.
What's
So-
the most common type of contaminant?
We're going to get to that very soon. So the contamination problem is also exacerbated by single stream, which many people thought was really going to improve recycling, but it's really added a lot to the contamination issue. And the other issue is what's been dubbed by the industry as aspirational recycling. And by that, what we mean is, not sure if it's recyclable, just throw it in the bin and hope that it is. So that's not working too well. So how does all this apply to Carlisle? Here's a section of the Recycling Committee's 2017 annual report of materials collected for recycling and the related revenue or cost to the town. Please note that revenue and costs fluctuate from year to year depending on the value of the various stock, and that depends on the market, the demand for the recycled stock, and also the costs associated with how those various materials are processed.
Looks like
So-
cardboard is back in style.
Well, cardboard was king for 2017. That doesn't guarantee that it will be. But as you can see, you saw that very quickly, Carrie. The plus symbol obviously indicates revenue to the town, and the minus that's highlighted in red is what it costs us. So I just highlighted the two biggest items in those categories. The net effect for Carlisle in 2017 was positive.
Well, a couple of years ago, we weren't getting anything for cardboard, and we were in net minus position. So that's very positive.
But that's market. And that could change. What is working one year is not necessarily going to work the next.
Got it.
So we honestly don't, this was what was generated this year, almost $3,000 in revenue. But we don't have any idea what's going to happen in 2018. And I have to say that I've seen reports that have come in, very current reports from other communities, and they have started to report much steeper losses in their revenue stream as a result of the changes that are happening.
Well, and that's not a profit number. That's just a revenue number. The cost of operating the transfer station is a heck of a lot more than $2,874.
That's an understatement. So, all right. So how well are we doing in terms of actual percentage of material that we collect to be recycled? Remember, what we collect is not necessarily what gets recycled, but that's the only information that we have. This section of the annual report shows the tonnage data, the trash total, that's the first item circled in red at the bottom of the chart, and the percentage of discarded material that is collected to be recycled, also circled in red in the bottom line. The average rate for collection of recyclables in the state is about 35%, and that's been pretty consistent for the state. It's low, but it's consistent. Carlisle was actually below the state average in 2017 with a collection rate of about 33.6%. The biggest factor in the recent decrease, and it's been a decrease over time, has to do with newsprint. More and more people are opting for digital news services and online news services. So
For every bag of recyclable material you have, there's 2 bags of non-recyclable stuff that's brought to the
Oh, that's another way of putting it. So, we definitely have a lot of solid waste. Trash, if you want to call it that. So we know that we're in sort of the average range of the state in terms of what we collect for recycling, but a much more critical number is actually, and this is what the Mass DEP is paying much closer attention to now, is the tonnage per household of solid waste, that 2 to 1 ratio you were talking about. So how do we look in relation to other towns in terms of our per household solid waste tonnage? Well, this is a graphic that was prepared with data from the Mass DEP, and it represents 6 years from 2008 to 2014, and it's trying to capture surrounding communities. And we were third highest in terms of our solid waste tonnage back in 2015.
per household.
Per household. It's pounds. So I call it tonnage, but it's in pounds. And Carlisle continues to be one of the heaviest per household trash tonnage districts in the state. This map is 2016. It's the most recent map that we have from the Mass DEP. And I've drawn a red arrow to point out where Carlisle is. You can see that at the top of the map. Again, towns and cities are color-coded based on that solid waste tonnage in the household. And you can see that Carlisle's red. And you can also see from this big map that we are in an increasingly lonely club because looking at the tonnage range for our category, circled in red, down there, we are much closer to the top trash generators category with 2,230 pounds per household. So by comparison, because the numbers only mean something if you compare them to something else, right, in this case. For comparison, the distinction for lowest per household solid waste tonnage goes to the town of Beckett with 325 pounds of household. I don't know about you, I've never heard of Beckett. So let's talk closer to home. Lincoln is a town similar to Carlisle in terms of demographics, size, and socioeconomic level, and it's pale green, weighing in at between 750 and 1,000 pounds of solid waste tonnage per household.
Now, how in these other towns, I mean, it's easy for us to calculate because we have a controlled environment with the transfer station. Other towns may have very different ways of disposing, and how do we know that we're talking apples and apples here?
So that's one of the big reasons, like in terms of recycling, that's one of the reasons why the Mass DEP has stopped putting so much emphasis on the recycling rates from various communities, because it is not apples to apples. What Lincoln collects for recycling, for example, and what they accept in their transfer station situation is very different from what we accept, and we have to look at that, and we have to look across the spectrum of other cities to see, well, who's really at the top of the heap, basically, in terms of doing best practices.
It really makes you wonder, why are we so different from the rest of the world, and so very different from the rest of the world. I know that we don't police the number of folks coming into the transfer station that have dump stickers.
Right.
And I've heard, and this is total hearsay, but I've heard that people come from other towns and whiz through our transfer station and get rid of their stuff because they can. And, so that we have issues of leakage, if you will, in terms of people. And we have so relatively few people that have bought dump stickers.
Well, I think the last numbers I got from the police department was actually not that bad, okay? We also have some communities and sections in Carlisle that hire private waste haulers, right? And we don't really cover that. But they are required by law to get stickers for every house they collect from. But we, don't really have a good sense necessarily of where they take that trash or what its tonnage is, how it impacts us, but that's a separate system.
Do you have a sense of why we're so different?
I do have some thoughts about it, but I'm going to be talking about a report that we were asked to present, and where the recycling committee is going to be collecting data. I think it's a combination of the number of items that we do accept, for example, white bulky items. Other towns don't accept things like kitchen appliances, refrigerators and stoves, etc. And frankly, if you buy a new refrigerator, they will come in, the person you bought it from will come in and take it away. It's a slight fee, but they take it away, as opposed to putting it in the transfer station where we then have the responsibility as a community to haul it away. Construction and demolition debris is another huge issue. And you mentioned monitoring, which is an issue. I mean, it's almost we don't really know if if so, how many people from other towns come in and use our services here. And not knowing is almost worse than knowing, because you're kind of, there's a suspicion. But if we know for sure, and there's only one way to know for sure, that's by tracking the vehicles that come in with a sticker, then we've got something we can really work with and say, well, yeah, it is a problem. It contributes to the problem, or nope, I guess that isn't it. We got to look dig deeper into what's going on here. So I just want to also point out that this particular map, there's a lot more information I can't go into in this particular map because of constraints of time, but this map I've heard referred to as the map of pride and the map of shame. So I think you can probably figure out what those designations are meant to
Before you
convey.
hit that button, can I ask a question? To Curry's point, and actually what you covered, these sections that are in gray, lighter gray
Yeah.
and darker gray, have either no minimum municipal trash program or no data reported.
Right.
And that's on top of the ones that may not be reporting correctly. They just have no reporting at all.
Right.
But I did want to ask about this one, the kind of the grid thing,
Right.
which you do see in some towns.
In a lot of towns.
In a lot of towns,
actually.
but not in
Yeah.
Carlisle. What is this payment smart system?
Well, that is pay as you throw, and it's also called the Save Money and Reduce Trash program, because some people, pay as you throw is getting kind of a negative name in some communities. And, you know, we run a totally volunteer program, and in fact, I've heard it been referred to as an all-you-can-eat buffet for people, because there aren't a lot of guidelines and monitoring of guidelines at the transfer station, and we accept pretty much everything. So you can see what the pay-as-you-throw towns do in terms of their solid waste household tonnage. It really comes way down. And I think the issue around pay-as-you-throw is that people think it's one size fits all. It is not. For example, Bedford does pay-as-you-throw. They're not included on this map as a pay-as-you-throw town because of the size of the containers that they provide to people. I won't get into that now, but what my point really, and the critical point, is that there are lots of variations that you can do within a community that fit the community better and still make it work. So that's that. Now, I'm going to move you to another. I don't know how much time I have here, but I love this slide. I usually show it. The reason I like to show it is because, and particularly for us, the combination of really a low recycling collection rate, and obviously the more you collect, potentially, the more you're going to recycle, but, you know, not a given, but it's possible. But the combination of that low recycling rate and one of the highest solid waste per household tonnages in the state, it begs the question, so what are we throwing away that we could be recycling or could be reused, for example? So we don't know precisely for Carlisle. We'd have to do a specific audit of Carlisle's trash to determine that, but we've got information from the state, and that's what this graphic represents, that really can be applied, and it is applied to towns. This was completed by the Mass DEP a few years ago. A main finding of the audits was that 90% of what households, businesses, and institutions discard, including what is recycled, could be reused, recycled, or composted. So that's 90%. Okay. Also, please note that much of what's in this trash truck is material that is banned from solid waste disposal in Massachusetts. Paper, plastics, construction, demolition debris, metals, even some hazardous waste like electronics, light bulbs, and paint. That speaks to the monitoring issue. And you may recall that a couple of years ago we were audited at the waste management facility, I believe, and found to have, actually no, it was at the incinerator plant in Andover, North Andover, that we had too much cardboard, which is a banned substance. And that, you know, that's what this is getting at. We really, if it's banned, it's against the law to throw it in there. We have to be a lot more diligent about what we put in our trash. So bottom line, this information tells us we could really be doing considerably better if we focused on it. So the average American tosses about 4.5 pounds of trash every single day. Doesn't sound like a lot, but you multiply that by about 324 million people in the States, and you get roughly 730,000 tons of garbage daily. So the waste keeps piling up on land and in the ocean. So what are the next steps for Carlisle? The bottom line is that we need to deal with two aspects of what we discard. cleaning up and increasing our recycling effort, and decreasing our solid waste tonnage. In January 2018, the Board of Selectmen asked the Recycling Committee to prepare a report on current operations at the transfer station and to provide options or recommendations for improvements that would work in Carlisle to improve recycling efforts, reduce solid waste tonnage, and make the process as convenient and friendly as possible, user-friendly as possible. And this is important for both economic and environmental reasons. Mass DEP is working really hard. I think this is really great news. They're working really hard on the issue, and they've developed a program called the Recycling IQ Kit and Toolkit. And Carlisle can apply for funding to get extra support to strengthen our program in both those areas, reducing solid waste and increasing our recycling through public outreach and materials. Funding from the program can also be used to hire monitors that would be on site to help with enforcement of guidelines, and that is a major issue, as we've discussed. So funding won't be available until after this winter, but in the meantime, some resources are available now, and we can start working today because we know some of the things we need to do to improve our recycling program here in Carlisle. And improving recycling can make a dent in our solid waste tonnage, though once again, it's not a given. For example, roughly 25 to 30% of solid waste tonnage that we send to go up and smoke in an incinerator and pay for that is due to food scraps referred to as organics that can be composted. We can work to boost our residential composting program in town through availability of discounted bins. We can also look into ways to provide some sort of general centralized collection of organics in town. There are a number of companies now that are springing up to do this for towns. One is called Black Earth. That's going to be included in our report too, just so we know what our options are. So this is an example of the materials some of the material from the Mass DEP, and it's designed to highlight the top contaminator identified by recycling facilities and the Mass DEP: plastic bags. Even plastic bags that have a recycling symbol on them should not go into any recycling bin. The bags plug up the sorting machines, bringing operations to a total halt, and they can also damage those expensive sorting machines. So please do not throw plastic bags into any of the bins at the transfer station.
Oh, boy.
No. So
They're so convenient. You just put one in your waste can, right? So that when you empty your waste can, all you do is pull your plastic bag out and put a knot in it and throw it in your larger collectible. I mean, it makes things so convenient, and it's
What we've been
the
doing,
biggest problem.
we've been doing Curry at Home for a couple of years now is using paper bags from the supermarket or Trader Joe's
Yeah,
to collect the recycling.
that would be that would,
right. So do you
Much
remember
better.
that conveyor belt that I showed you?
yeah.
So now imagine this. We're focused on plastic bags because they can gum up the machines. But also plastic bags, if the material is in a plastic bag, but thank you for thinking about that alternative. They still have to, paper bag, they still have to dump it out of that paper bag. Maybe that's not.
I've been trying to not use the paper bag. Well, what I should say, what I do is I use the paper bag to throw it into the trash.
Right.
And you can do that with the plastic bags as well, and that's basically what I was going to say. If you do find it more convenient to store them in a plastic bag, then you just take them and you just dump that out and take the bag with you. And then you can either keep the bag for future use if it's clean, or you can take it to the grocery stores that are now accepting those bags for recycling. They just cannot go to a sorting facility because they muck it up. And better yet, I think, is, and this helps in a lot of ways, is to transport your recyclables in reusable bins and avoid the problem altogether. Here's a photo of what my husband and I use. We have 4 of these bins. They're all the same color, but we know by heart now. We've been using this for quite some time, what goes in which bin. And they're durable, they're not expensive, they're not that big in terms of space they take. These are in our garage. stacked vertically. And there are many, this works for us. There are a lot of different options that people could have. We take it, we dump it, we take the bin back. End of story. So, your question, what are some other major contaminants? Did I mention plastic bags, maybe? So, please remember, no plastic bags in the recycling bin, either with stuff in it or in the stuff that you take. Here's another one. This one kind of surprised me. This is late-breaking news. These food containers that look like they should be recyclable because they're plastic are going to be banned as a recycling item. And it's for two reasons. The food contamination, because people are not consistently really good about cleaning them out. And these dirty food containers can contaminate an entire bale if you get enough of them in a bale. And the whole bale needs to be pitched because there's too much contamination.
Well, Anna, can I ask a question about this? Because I've been thinking about this for a little while. In a way, I think maybe it is good that they're banning this because it'll clear things up. But to take the time, it's not just the time. If you're taking the time to clean them, you're using, let's say, hot water, perhaps so. I mean, you're using energy to clean something to recycle. So what's really, you're using energy. So what's really, is it worth it to clean it?
Well,
I guess where I'm
honestly, I have not done, but that's a good thing to look up. I haven't done a sort of an energy analysis of this. That might be a good question for the Energy Task Force. But bottom line, I think the other issue here is that the plastic itself, there are so many different grades of plastic. That's actually starting to become more consistent. You're going to see more and more plastic containers that are number 1, which is high value, number 2, I believe, and also number 5. And I sort out my number 5 plastics, like yogurt containers, and take them to Whole Foods because they actually accept, through a program called Gimme 5, they accept those. And I'm there, twice a week probably. But to your point, I guess that's where you have to figure out if the energy, for example, styrofoam, the energy that it takes to recycle styrofoam far outstrips the value of that recycled stock. And people want to get rid of it. They feel guilty if they throw it in the trash. But honestly, to recycle it is very energy intensive and not worth it if you care about that aspect of the trash system. And that is an important aspect. So here's another offender. Pizza boxes, major example of food contamination. And the problem here is that the oil seeps into the cardboard, and you can't separate the oil from the cardboard. Is that the equivalent of a hook?
Just about.
Just about.
So the problem is that the oil seeps into the cardboard. They can't separate it out, and it's unusable by recyclers in that condition. However, there are two sides to a pizza box. Usually the top, the lid is clean, and if there are a few crumbs or maybe a teeny spot, but then when I say a word like teeny, I'm not giving you metrics on that, right? So that's so subjective. But if it's really greasy, or even moderately greasy, don't do it. And, okay, we also have coffee cups. They cannot be recycled, including the lids are now going to be banned. That cannot be recycled because a lot of coffee cups have a wax coating, and not a wax, a plastic coating, and they can't deal with that efficiently in the recycling facilities because they have to separate those materials. So, and I was surprised to learn that even the lids are going to be off the list, but the problem there is the different kinds of plastics that are being used. So, diapers, dirty diapers, not just clean diapers. And yes, people do this. Need I say more? Okay, this is an example of what we're going to be getting from the Mass DEP in about a week and a half. Now, I know this is hard to read. I apologize for this poor graphic. I was given this yesterday afternoon as a sneak preview. I was given permission to share it because I knew people would be interested. I see Angela writing things down, but you're going to have a list fairly soon. And I'm, by no means am I giving you an exhaustive list of what is good and what isn't good for recycling, but it's going to be really detailed. You're going to have photographs. You're going to know what in those categories that people generally have thrown out thinking it was okay. They're going to identify those very clearly. They have the same thing for paper and cardboard. So again, I was lucky enough to get a sneak preview. That's going to be made public soon. And so here we are, kind of the last slide, frankly. And as the saying goes, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem, period. And each and every one of us generates trash. It's something we all have to deal with. And this trash crisis is honestly a golden opportunity for us to think about what we do and to think about what kinds of changes we can make to the system and to rethink our impact and make changes that we're all capable of making. This is truly about each of us doing our part to build a program in Carlisle that we can be proud of. We can grow our recycling IQ and our waste reduction IQ. And let's see how quickly we can move from the map of shame to the map of pride in those statewide maps. And just the closing slide, the recycling committee would be more than happy for people to submit questions. We're using the web address recycling@carlisle.org. Hope people feel free to give us questions. I would hope that after we release the materials, they're going to be published and then posted on the website. But we'll make sure that people know that material is out there. And that's what I've got to say today.
Lana, do you know whether there's a link between that website and the revamped town website?
It's on the town
It
website.
is? Okay,
Yeah.
that's good.
There are two different websites, but I thought this was the easiest one. And this will go directly to members of the recycling committee, so we can address it. We also, I showed a slide with the 2017 annual report, but that isn't yet up on the website. So we want to get the most current information up there, okay? So,
Well, Lona's not a Johnny-come-lately to this issue. I know she's been concerned about this for a long time. She taught my granddaughter how to compost at the Carlisle Public Schools.
she was a champion.
And so she knows what she's talking about. And I think, the technology is changing. Our habits are changing. We're entering a year of master planning for the town. And one of the things on that agenda is sustainability. So there's a lot in this mix. The Board of Selectmen, I know, are very interested in knowing how to improve the operation generally and of the transfer station. So without getting rid of the swap shed, certainly. So there's a lot happening right now, a lot of moving parts. And I thank you very much for. I mean, I am one of the worst offenders. I probably make that go from pink to red myself. So it's. I thank you for helping educate us.
Well, thank you,
And
Carrie.
it's very important.
I think we all are fooled into thinking we're doing such a great job because of the different bins and, people are good about that. So it's astonishing to me to realize that it's not what it appears to be.
We have to find ways of making it habitual and making it an easy thing to do rather than a difficult thing to do to meet these requirements. And
And there's
that's,
confusion about
yeah.
what's okay
Yeah.
and what isn't. I mean, some of the most ardent recyclers I know couldn't believe it when I said, no, plastic bin bags can't go in, but there's a recycling number on it. Right, but, so that kind of thing. It hasn't been easy, frankly, and communicating and changing behavior is really kind of tough. I just hope that people have an open mind to receive the information, and then together as a community we'll figure out what makes the most sense to do those two things.
I think it's very key. We need to be receptive to doing things differently. Yeah.
Did we, I'm sorry, did you mention that you were going to send that slideshow to Angela?
I can send it to you, absolutely. I've already submitted
Sent
it
it
to cable news,
CCTV.
so it'll be run on cable TV, I
Right,
guess.
okay,
I
thank you
think
so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for
Thank you.
having me.
Thanks for coming.
Well, we're going to jump right in. we've got a lot going on coming into our fall season. The fall and spring are not too surprisingly are the best weather months, and so we have a lot of activities, not just because kids and families are back from school, but because we have the opportunity to do things. But a couple good things are going on. The Council on Aging, and indeed the Mass Council on Aging, had dipped its toe into the fight against Alzheimer's over the last several years, but now we've got a foot or two fully in, and we have our own team here in Carlisle. We call it the Carlisle Fights Alzheimer's Team, and so the Alzheimer's Walk that our team is both participating in and trying to raise money for is September 16th.
Yes, September 16th, Sunday morning in Andover.
Angela is leading the way. I know you're surprised, Kerry, but Angela's leading our team, but we have a strong team of staff members. Debbie and Miriam, I believe, are doing it.
Yep.
Al Foote, who's the custodian for our building, and several other friends of the Council on Aging, friends in the more general sense than just the friends of the Carlisle Council on Aging Committee are joining in. Last year, we raised a kind of a surprising amount of money, and whether we match or exceed that this year is, I don't want to say it's immaterial. Sometimes it's hard to meet aggressive goals, but we got an earlier start, so I think we're trying.
We're trying very hard.
Yeah. So there's information about that coming up in our newsletter, both on the front page in Angela's Outreach with Angela section. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to call the Council on Aging or go to the Alzheimer's
Website. And there is a purple can at Fern's by the cash register. Thank you to Matt.
So, do everybody please do what you can for that. Also, October, since we're covering the September-October newsletter, is the annual campaign for the Carlisle Community Chest. And they have that kickoff month, which is kind of a blackout for other fundraisings from our perspective, because we also do other fundraising, for example, for the Friends of the Carlisle Council on Aging. But the Community Chest not only supports activities here in Carlisle, but activities in Concord, but also general activities that are just really good for the community. And on their website, they have a list of the groups that they support, and it's a pretty impressive list, like things that we'd all be proud to support anyway. It's, for me, it was growing up, it was the place on the Monopoly board, but there actually is a community chest that we can contribute to, and they're at cccommunitychest.org, CC being for Concord Carlisle. cccommunitychest.org is their website. Jumping, and should I keep on going?
Sure.
Okay, we've got a couple trips coming up in September. We would like to start off with our trips and our kind of food events, food being near and dear to our heart. Joanne Willens is leading a trip to the Landing Restaurant, which is in Marblehead, and that is going to be on September 12th. And anybody who's interested in that, Marblehead is always a good place to visit, interesting and beautiful. And Joanne can be reached at 978-371-8023. And she asked that the registration be completed by September 5th. So that's 978-371-8023 to call Joanne and register for the website. We've got another trip similar to that, October 1st at Manja Manja in Billerica, which is kind of a local favorite. Although I haven't been there, I hear the food is good. And we have a trip which is really popular, which normally is done in August, but has been rescheduled to September, to the JFK Presidential Library Museum. And have you been on that trip yet?
I haven't. My wife has, and Frank does.
Frank Rigg does a great
Rigg
job.
does a fantastic, because he has the inside scoop. So if you want
Right.
to hear what really happened between Ted Kennedy when he got there and
Right. So those who may not be aware, our listening audience, Frank Rigg, who's a Carlisle resident, worked at the
He was the director of the library, yeah.
he was the curator of the library, but he worked there for over 30 years in various capacities and ended up being the curator. So he, to your point, he has a lot of inside knowledge. And sometimes we're able to go to places that the public isn't able to go.
Well, it's a beautiful spot, and it's really well done. The whole thing is very
It's
well
a
done.
favorite trip. Most of us have taken our turn going, and
And then you get to go to Sully's for lobster rolls.
Oh, there you go.
get to
right.
go to Castle Island and Sullivan's afterwards, so that's nice. And also, there's going to be a trip to York and Algonquin, Maine, on Tuesday, September 25th, and that's always a good trip. Again, that's a Joanne Willens arranged trip. Please call and express your interest to Joanne and register if you're interested, so that we know how many people are going to be going. Because usually on these trips, we only have 12 spots in the van. And if there's more, we either can't accommodate it, or we have to do some type of extraordinary machinations to try to accommodate it, so, which isn't always possible. So please, better to register early if possible. And if you do register and then can't go, please call us and let us know so that somebody else perhaps on the waiting list can go. I think I'm going to defer to you here. because you've
Okay,
got so
I
much to
think we
cover.
have one more trip on the next page. If you
Oh,
flip
okay.
over,
I'm going to go
there's one at the bottom.
Rentham Village Outlet? But
Yeah.
that is not until November 13th.
Okay,
So-
then we'll wait on that.
Okay.
Okay, so then we're going to talk about eating, because we all love to eat. So we're going to have our Chelmsford Crossing lunch, which is supported by Minuteman Senior Services and Chelmsford Crossing, who provides delicious food. And that's going to be on September 5th at the Congregational Church. And Mark Hopkins, who is well-known as an award-winning digital photographer, is going to come and talk about digital photography and how he got into it. And then our COA lunch for September is our annual thank the town employees, and we're going to have Ray Taylor and Santo Pilara providing music, as well as our normal COA board member team helping out with the food. And we're going to do men's breakfast in September and October on the second Thursday at 8 a.m. and the monthly coffee in September on September 6th and on October 3rd. So we're looking forward to that. And we're trying a new meal. We go to Neshoba Tech for lunches, which we'll do on September 26th and October 10th. But we're also going to try going to the UETC Cafe in Lowell. And they're an organization that's set up to try to help kids get on a good path rather than something that wouldn't be so promising. And so they have a culinary art program as well. So we're going to go there on September 19th and try their menu for the first time. And then we'll have senior moments at Ferns, as usual, on the 10th and 24th of September. And I think I'm going to stay away from the October lunches, because we'll be back at the end of September to go into them. And just tell you that we will be having a play, though, coming in early October, with Lillian's taking people to the Greater Boston Stage Company. And that's going to be October 3rd, and they're going to see the importance of being earnest. So those are things you need to reserve by September 26th. And you also need an early reservation for the Chelmsford Crossing lunch on October 4th. And with that, we're going to have a presentation on Scotland. And Deborah Bentley is Scottish, and she's going to tell us all about the country and show us pictures of it. So, David.
I did want to mention, thank you, Angela, I did want to mention, almost forgot, even though it's a November event, that we are planning on running the Carlisle Intergenerational Road Race again. This is the 4th year, and it's kind of a special year because this being 2018, it's the 100th anniversary of the armistice that ended World War I. So Deborah Bentley, speaking of Deborah Bentley, who's going to be doing our
Poppies.
Presentation on Scotland. She's also spearheaded an effort that some may have seen in Carlisle to create poppies. Poppies being a symbol that in Great Britain is associated with the armistice that ended World War I. And apparently that's due to a famous poem from the era called Flanders Field that was created during that time. So Deborah's also already done a few poppy events, and I think she's going to be doing more. So Veterans Day is falling on Sunday, November 11th. The first 3 years of the road race, we had the race on Veterans Day, and we did a flag raising, and it was wonderful joining the event. This year, we're going to be having the road race on the 12th, on the Monday. School's off, kids can participate, but more importantly, from a logistical viewpoint, we need to use FRS because that's kind of our gathering point, landing point to administer the race. And so we wouldn't be able to do that on Sunday. So it'll be on Monday, November 12th. You'll be hearing more about it. There'll be information both in the newsletter and in the Mosquito.
Since we have a lot of fun cultural events in the fall, maybe Jean can tell us what the Friends of the Council on Aging and the Friends of the Gleason Library are bringing to us.
And the list just goes on and on. I am always impressed by the size of our town and what our COA does to provide for our seniors. So I will talk in a minute about the upcoming lecture series that are sponsored by the Friends of the Carlisle Council on Aging and the Gleason Library. But first, I just want to report that we had a wonderful annual meeting at the end of May, and a Carlisle resident, Mark Reed, who's a radio astronomer, gave a fascinating talk on mapping the Milky Way and his 2 trips a year to Tasmania. So we have amazing numbers of people with tremendous things to share, and we always look forward to having the town come to our annual meeting and understand a little bit more in person about what the Friends do. But to continue with what has been mentioned about upcoming events, we're again fortunate to have 3 major events at the library that the Friends and the Gleason Library co-sponsor. Returning are 3 speakers that are well known to Carlisle and just great presenters of their topics. The first is America by the Book, and it's Dr. Gary Highlander who will be speaking at Gleason Library on 2 dates this fall. The first is September 26th, and up for discussion will be Uncle Tom's Cabin. And on October 3rd, same time, same place, The Grapes of Wrath. And the reading of these 2 books is not required, but there will be synopses ready for perusal at the library. And a reminder that Dr. Highlander is a presidential historian. He's spoken many times here in Carlisle, and he's a pedagogical specialist for the National Endowment for the Humanities. He's very entertaining, very knowledgeable. I urge everyone to register. Registration is already open, and that can be done by calling the library at 978-369-4898. In October...
Excuse me, Gina, I might add that that's always a sellout with Dr. Highlander. So get your reservation in early because it's at the library on the 3rd floor. There's limited space. So
correct. And if there are people who haven't registered and show up, they'll be turned away. It's fire code, and it would be disappointing to expect to go, but the registration is critical. Also, in October, there'll be 2 different presentations by Richard Travers, and he is also a Carlisle favorite. He'll be talking about the Great American Songbook on October 10th, again at the library, 1:30, that's a Wednesday. And on October 17th, he'll be talking about Leonard Bernstein. And again, registration is required. And again, the number for the Carlisle Library, Gleason Library, is 4898. Following on the heels of those two presenters will be again a repeat presenter talking about Eastern religions with Jason Giannetti. On the 24th of October, his topic will be Hinduism and the Beginnings of Buddhism. And on October 31st, the spread of Buddhism to China, where it is met Confucianism and Taoism. And Jason Giannetti is a Master of Theological Studies from Harvard, a JD from Boston College, and again, registration is critical to that. So these are very popular speakers, and as Carrie mentioned, these are talks that are well attended, and so don't miss out. And be on the lookout, too, for additional information in the upcoming Council on Aging newsletter. I also would like to put a plug in for the Friends. As you know, the Friends is the fundraising arm of the Council on Aging, and we will be kicking off our fall fundraiser. So pay attention for the information that will come in the newsletter this fall, and a reminder that you can contribute anytime to the Friends, Box 38, Carlisle, Mass. 01741. But a reminder that the mission of the Friends is to support the physical and emotional well-being of Carlisle seniors and to fund grants for exercise programs, the lecture series, fuel assistance, transportation, everything that we can do to help.
Large print books at the library?
Large print books and audiobooks as well. So we have a wonderful board, Carrie being on that board, and we hope that you will all be as generous as possible in supporting the Friends and their efforts to help the COA. So
I'm reading one of those large print books right now. Yeah, it's very good. Once you start reading from a Kindle, which is also great because of the backlighting, it's nice to have like the slightly larger print books, actually. Thanks so much, Jean. We did want to mention, maybe you were going to do it, but it's on the same page, Angela, the flu clinic, October 12th. Did you want to talk about that for a moment?
Well, why don't you go on?
Okay, great. The important thing for the flu clinic, which is sponsored by the Board of Health and the Council on Aging, of course, supports it, is to bring your Medicare card. If you bring
Your insurance card.
Okay, or your insurance card, and Medicare cards, by the way, for those who don't know, are being phased in, new Medicare cards. So we've got a minute? Yes. Oh, okay. We don't have a lot of time. Is there anything else besides the flu clinic we
I
want to
think
mention?
we want to tell people there is the Medicare information, and that starts on October 30th at 2 p.m., and it's here in Town Hall. So if you need to relook at your Medicare, which everybody should do who's over 65 annually, we'll have somebody here to give you the highlights of what changes this year and what your options are.
We also have the podiatry clinic Monday, September 4th, and we have exercise programs every day of the week. And if you haven't partaken in any of the exercise programs, please call the office, 978-371-2895, and register for a class. You can take one for free, no pressure. We just want to help you.
Absolutely.
Well, we're all very happy to be part of the best intergenerational small town in America, Carlisle, Massachusetts. I can't believe it's the middle of October already, but I think this was a terrific topic today, and your newsletter that's coming out, everybody better look for the newsletter. It is just chock full of events. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Carrie.